All right, let's jump right in. Today we're diving into a really fascinating political theory. It's all about how a leader's life story gets told, or, and this is the key part, how it gets erased, and what that empty space, that deliberate blank page actually means for a democracy.
So, let's kick things off with this central puzzle, this paradox. How can a leader be one of the most documented people in the world, and at the same time, one of the least known? I mean, you see them everywhere, right? Speeches, rallies, their faces on everything. But their actual personal story, who they are deep down, it's a total blank. How does that even happen?
And this really breaks down that divide for us. On one side, you've got this mountain of public records, all the speeches, the slogans, the photos. And on the other side, a total void, a missing personal story. Now, the author of this theory argues this isn't just an accident or a coincidence. No, it's a very deliberate strategy. It's designed to solve a very specific political problem.
And that problem is something the source material calls the ordinary man problem. This is it. This is the absolute core of the idea we're going to unpack today. Everything else builds from here.
Okay, so what is this ordinary man problem? Well, think about it. Before any leader can become this larger-than-life figure, they first have to deal with their own ordinary past. You know, a life filled with the same kind of stuff we all go through. Mistakes, awkward phases, failures. And the author's whole point is that this ordinariness is exactly what we, the citizens, need to see to actually evaluate them.
And this quote right here just flips the whole script on what we normally think about politics. We usually assume leaders want to seem, extraordinary, almost godlike. But this theory says, nope, that's not it. Ordinariness isn't some flaw you need to hide. It's actually a democratic necessity, a vital tool.
So why? Why is it so important? Well, because it gives you a yardstick, right? A way to measure them. If you can see their past with all its messy parts and moments of growth, you can measure them against who they used to be. You can compare them to other leaders. And most importantly, you can actually judge their character based on a real record. Take that away and, well, how can you really evaluate them at all?
Okay, so if the strategy is to get rid of this ordinary man problem by just erasing the ordinary parts of their life, what fills that huge gap? The author's answer is incredibly simple. You replace the biography with a myth.
And here's what that trade-off looks like. A real biography. It's messy, it's human. It anchors a leader in the real world, full of context and doubt and second-guessing. But a myth is clean. It's powerful. It lifts them up, turns them into something bigger than a person, something that almost demands your reverence.
This mythic story always follows a really simple, almost predictable formula. The author calls it a mythic compression. It's like taking a whole complicated life and squishing it down into just a few key cinematic moments. It's basically a highlight reel that plays out like an old fable, you know the one. Humble beginnings, some big sacrifice, and then this inevitable, destined rise to power.
And there's actually a word for this exact type of storytelling. It's called hagiography. It's not about writing history or documenting a real life. It's about writing the life of a saint. The goal has nothing to do with accuracy. It's all about creating reverence. This is absolutely central to the whole theory.
And that is why these stories are always so vague. Because detail is the enemy of myth. Think about it. A specific date, the name of a childhood friend, a documented screw-up. Those are all things that you can look up, that you can verify. And if you can verify it, you can contradict it. And once you pull on that one little thread, the whole myth can just fall apart.
Which brings us to how they actually maintain this myth. How do you keep it going? Well, the author argues that what you don't say, the silence, the gaps in the story, is every bit as important as what you do say. It's what you could call a politics of absence. And what this does is create this huge imbalance, which the author calls an asymmetry of knowledge. Just think about it for a second. The state knows more and more about you, the citizen, through data and all sorts of things. But at the exact same time, you, the citizen, are expected to know less and less about the actual personal life of the leader. Information and power are flowing one way, but understanding and accountability, they're not flowing.
This quote just nails the kind of communication style that comes out of this. You get tons of speeches, endless rallies, constant broadcasts. Information is always being blasted out. But how often do you see a real press conference, a tough interview, any unscripted moment where information could flow back in? It's scarce. It's a monologue, not a dialogue.
So you see, that silence isn't just a leader being, a private person. The author says to think of it as an active, deliberate discipline. Every off-the-cuff answer, every little flash of irritation, every moment of hesitation, all of that stuff adds up. It creates a psychological record. And by constantly avoiding those situations, that record never gets a chance to build up, which keeps that perfect, mythic image totally clean.
Okay, so what's the big deal? What are the consequences here? According to the author, this whole strategy offers some pretty clear political wins for the leader, but it comes at a huge, huge cost to democracy. First, let's talk about the gains for the leader. When you erase your ordinary past, you basically become immune to comparison. Who can they compare you to? There's no one else like you. Any criticism starts to feel like an act of disrespect, which gives you this kind of moral insulation. You start to seem timeless, like a force of history, not just some politician from a specific time. And it creates this massive psychological distance. Your followers don't see you as an equal. They relate to you through reverence.
And now, the cost. And this is the author's big warning. The problem isn't that leaders have flaws. Come on, every leader has flaws. That's just being human. The real, true danger is when we lose the ability to examine those flaws, because that's the moment accountability starts to wither away.
All right, so let's bring this all together. The author's final point frames this entire strategy not as some personal quirk or just a communication style. No, it's presented as something much more calculated, much more systematic. And here it is, the thesis, the big takeaway. In modern mass politics, the erasure of biography is a technology of power. It's a tool, plain and simple, a tool designed to grab power and hold on to it in a very particular way.
And this technology, it changes things. It's transformative. It converts a leader from a person into a symbol. It asks you, the citizen, to stop being just a voter and start being a believer. And when that happens, politics itself shifts. It moves away from being about debate and judgment and becomes something much more like faith.
And what it all boils down to is this. When that human story, that ordinariness, is completely gone, what are we left with? Just our imagination. We literally lose the ability to judge our leaders properly because the very evidence we need to do it, it's been wiped clean.
So I'll leave you with one last question to think about. When a story replaces a person, when a myth replaces a biography, who or what are we actually voting for?